Good morning. I tell you what, can I be transparent straight off the back? Can I do that? First, I want to introduce myself. My name is Derik Griffin from Times Square Church. I'm actually here for the first time in Ireland, and I love this beautiful country. And I told Pastor Nick, if he keeps feeding me the way he is, I'm not going nowhere. Me and my wife, we're having a ball here, and I want to say thank you for just allowing us to be a part of what God is doing in your midst. I do want to be transparent. It's no sin, don't get me wrong. It's just I just want to make sure I'm sharing it right. You know, there was a time, being a part of Times Square Church, that I went on this missions trip to Colombia, Medellin. And on my way to Colombia, I was really prepared to preach. You know, that's my heart. I do believe that it's a calling. And so I got to Colombia, and I was ready. I'm ready to preach. Let's go. So I get there, and the pastor's like, Derik, share your testimony. So I'm like, okay. And I'm sharing my testimony. And for me, I'm going to these dark areas in my life that I really didn't enjoy. So there was a lot of brokenness, a lot of hurt, a lot of pain. And so we would go to another church, and he'd go, Derik, share your testimony. And then another church, Derik, share your testimony. Derik, share your testimony. And we get to the radio station, and they pass me the microphone. They go, Derik, you got 1 hour, share your testimony. And to be honest with you, I began to get upset because I felt like they was turning me on like a light switch. And for me, I was going to these dark areas, and it was painful for me. And I was getting mad at the pastor. I was getting mad at my team. I was getting mad at God. Because I'm like, wait a minute, I came here with a whole team. They got testimonies. But what I didn't know at the moment is that God was doing something in me. I'll share something else with you. For a lot of years in Times Square Church, serving God to the fullest. Whatever God would give me the ability to do, I would put my hands to work. Love the Lord. I can pray and believe God for you and believe God for the world. But there was a problem. You see, I knew who I was. And not who I was then, but I knew who I was prior to Christ. And I can never get past the fact that all the hurt that I've caused, all the wrong that I've done, that God could love me the way he loves others, and that God could use me in the magnitude that he would use other men and women. And so what I would do is I found myself shortening the arms of God concerning my life and how he wants to use me. And so God would come and he would speak and he would tell me all these plans that he had for my life. And I would kind of shrink back because I'd be like, not me, God. Like if they found out who I was, if they found out what I've done, never would I be accepted. And so in Colombia, as I was struggling, sharing my testimony, God began to speak to me through the book of Psalms 139. And as I began to read Psalms 139, I can hear the Spirit of God just really speaking to my heart. And he says, Derik, I've searched you and I've known you. And he said, Derik, the thoughts that's in your mind, I already know them before you think them. And he said, the words that come from your mouth, I already know them before you say them. And he began to share with me how before I was even in my mother's womb, he knew me. But in spite of all the wrong I've done, in spite of the hurt that I've caused, that he still chose me and appointed me to bear fruit that would last. And it began to resonate in my heart. And I realized something. I realized right then at that moment that I was not who I was in me, but that I am who I am in him. And so there was a measure of freedom freedom that came into my life that I've never experienced before. And so I want to let you know, I'm going to talk a little bit different than some people. I got a little different walk than some people. But I know that I am accepted in the beloved. And I know that there are men and women that are sitting here today. There's so much hurt and pain that has been caused over a lifetime. And oftentimes, even as men and women of God, we still walk with the weight of it. There's a measure of freedom, but there's still guilt and shame that overhangs us oftentimes. And I'm here today to let you know that we are free. The Bible says, he who the Son has set free is free indeed. And so with that in mind, I really did, to be honest with you today, I was ready to preach this morning. I'm going to tell you the truth. But just coming into these doors, God once again began to say, put down the Bible, Derik, because that's when the anointing comes. For me, at least. And so that's what I'm going to do. So the same thing I shared with your children last night, I'm going to begin to share with you, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about myself. From as early as I can remember, I had to be around 3 or 4 years old. The earliest remember I can, as I heard this knock on the door. And as a young man, I'm just sitting to see who would come into the door. My mom goes to the door, she opens the door up, and there's 2 big black men with guns. And they come into my house to rob my house because we were a drug dealing family. And so my little brother's in the crib. He's a couple of years old. They're turning him over. They're looking for money and for drugs. And I'm just stuck in another world, like trying to figure out what is happening in my house. And maybe a couple of days later, it's in the wee hours of the morning. Got to be about 3, 4 o'clock in the morning. It's cold, and we hear the fire engines are roaring. You see the firemen are in our house, and they're taking us out of our house in a hurry. And so we get out in the middle of the street, and it's about 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning, and I'm watching the building next to mine burn. You see, what my father did was that those men that robbed my house, my father burnt down the building to hide the fact that he tried to kill these 2 men. And so I remember one morning I'm in the bathroom with my father, and he's shaving. And he has on his boxer drawers, and I'm a young man, and I'm just looking at my father. I'm gleaming. I love my father. And I just love him. And so he's shaving, and the next thing you know, you hear doors getting kicked in, the windows are getting kicked in, police are coming in from everywhere, and they all got the guns out. And they got the guns pointed at my father. And so they take my father, they lock him up, and they take him out of my house. And as he's walking out of the house, I'm looking at my father because I love him. And he didn't say anything to me, but he just looked back at me. And the look in his eyes, it said so much. Years later, my father comes home from prison. Again, we're still a drug dealing family. And my father, his name was Rod. And so everybody expected me to be just like my father. But yet I was so different. Even as a young man, when I grew up, I wanted to be married. I wanted to be a father. I wanted to go to work. I wanted to have a briefcase and to wear a suit, but where I lived at, it's like everybody expected me to be somebody else. They expected me to be my father. They expected me to be little Rod. And I hated my father for that. It's crazy because it was this love-hate relationship. I hated him because of who he was, but I loved him because he was my father. And so what did I do? I found myself just trying to fill his shoes. And so I became this young man that everybody expected. I filled the shoes of my father. I wanted to get the respect of the people that my father had because I wanted to make my father proud. I wanted him to look at me and go, that's my boy. That's my son. And so I did everything in the world that I could find my hands to do that would please my father. And so In doing that, of course, as a young man, I would have grown men working for me, selling drugs. I'm 13, 14 years old, and I got grown men, 30-something years old, selling drugs for me. I don't even know what I'm doing. I'm just trying to fulfill the shoes of my father. And so I continued to do this for years, and I got good at it. You see, my father would come home in the middle of the night, 3 o'clock in the morning as a young man, me and my brothers and sisters, and we would sit, and my father was a heroin addict. So he would come in with a bag of candy every night, about 3, 4 o'clock in the morning. We had school the next morning, but we would hear my father come in the door, and we would all get up and just sit up under the tutelage of my father. And he would tell us all these war stories. He would tell us all the things that he's done, everything that was happening in the street, and we would just eat that stuff up. And so, this began to carry me through life a bit. And I remember when I was about 18 years old, all the people that was around me, all my friends, they were dying, they were going to jail, and there was still that part of me that wanted to do the right thing. I just wanted to do the right thing. And so what I called myself doing, I knew I had to get away. Because if I didn't get away, I knew I was going to jail or I was going to get killed. That was just the history that was going on. It was just the bottom line. You're going to jail for a long time or you're going to die. And I just didn't want that. And so I enrolled in the military. And I went away to the military for about 6 years. And I stayed there. And in the military, I loved being a soldier. But I still loved being a criminal. And so, yeah, it's funny, because if I had my choice, I would have stayed in the military and retired because I really enjoyed being a soldier. But again, like I said, I enjoyed being a criminal. So in the military, I just did everything in the world you could think of. And some of the stuff I can't even share with you. But in doing that, I was in the military for about 6 years. There came a point that they were trying to lock me up for 10 years because of some of the things that I've done. They were sending me to this place called Fort Leavenworth. And all we knew about Fort Leavenworth is that they turned big rocks into small rocks. And of course, nobody wanted that. So I didn't know God at the time. And I remember, because I knew so many people, I kept being one step ahead of everything that they were doing. Everything that they were trying to put together against me, I was finding myself one step ahead of them. Even to the point that I was able to get out of the military with an honorable discharge because I already served 6 years. Where that loophole came from, now I know. Then I didn't know. But because I served for 6 years already, I was able to take a voluntary discharge and get an honorable discharge. And so I did that, and I got out of there. But when I came home, my mom, who was part of this drug dealing family, she was a Christian all of a sudden. So, I come home from the military. I'm a grown man now, and my mom is a Christian, and she says, "Derik, why don't you come with me to church?" I love my mom. I want to please my mom. I'll go, okay, I'll go to church with you. But part of me is like, yeah, all right. So I go to church with her. And I'm in church, and I call myself being wise and being smart. So the church we was in the middle of service, just like this, I'd be like, "Excuse me, I got a question." And I thank God right now for this particular pastor because she entertained my questions. And as she began to answer my questions, God was answering the questions of my heart. And I was like, excuse me. And she just kept pouring into me. And all of a sudden, I fell in love with this Jesus. And nobody on the block understood what was happening. They like, "What? You're going to church?" I'm like, "I'm going to church. I love Jesus." And they looking at me like I'm crazy because nobody I knew was a Christian. We've seen Christian families, but that wasn't going to be a part of our family. No way. So anyway, I'm a Christian for about 6 months. I'm in love with God. And then I got a friend of mine who says, he goes, "Derik," he goes, "this is my birthday party, blah, 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 blah." And he goes, "Please come." And I go, "Nah, I'm good." And he goes, no, please, you gotta come. You my man, you my best friend, you gotta come. I'm going, nah, I'm good. And then he goes, come on, man, please. And then I go, all right, but I'm just gonna go in and then we're gonna say happy birthday and I'm gonna leave. Yeah, okay. I get to the party, the music is playing. Bum, bum, bum. It's over. Then he comes up to me with this young lady and he goes, I want you to meet this young lady. So me and the young lady, we go, hey, how you doing? And we just continue doing what we're doing. So about a month later, now I'm backslidden. And I'm trying to figure out how in the world this happened. How did I get backslidden all of a sudden? So he tells me, yeah, I want you to meet this girl, Derik. And she's getting ready to walk in the door in a few minutes. I just saw her coming. He goes, I want you to meet this girl, Derik. And I go, man, I don't want to meet no girl. I just got divorced. I just had another young lady that I was getting ready to get married to, and that wasn't working out. So I wasn't looking for another relationship. And I found myself backslidden now as a Christian. So I'm hurt. I'm trying to find God. So anyway, I go to this house, and I go meet this girl anyway, because he's just begging me. So I get in the house, and this young lady's sitting down, and we start talking. And as we're talking, we're not talking about each other. We're not talking about, oh, you look so beautiful, and this, that, and the third. All we can talk about is where we want it to be and our relationship with God. And as we're talking, I'm falling in love with her because I never heard nobody talk like that. She's backslidden. I'm backslidden. And she don't know I'm backslidden. I don't know if she's backslidden. But all we're talking about is where we want to be in our relationship with God. And I'm like, I love her. So I used to come to her house, right? She had a boyfriend at the time. So I used to come to her house and spend time with her and used to brush her hair and talk to her. And listen, you're laughing. The boyfriend used to come over. He would come over. I'd be in the living room sitting down like on the couch. I ain't going nowhere. So she would open the door. He would go into the kitchen. They would talk for a few minutes, and then you see he's gone. And I'll go back to brushing her hair, being in love. And she didn't know it at the time, but I was in love. I was done. So anyway, this happened for a couple of times. He would come over. Then it came a time, I remember one day, we were all in her house. It was me, her, and it was her mom. And he rolled up in this car. I still remember the car. It was a white BMW. And he had a friend with him. So, again, you know how we do as men. We see you far away and yeah, I got you. We already done sized you up. So he gets out the car. And I look at her, and I go, no, I got this. So I go to the door, and I go outside the door, and I close the door behind me. Boom. And I see her and her mom in the window. They got big eyes. Their eyes are like this big. And so he walks up, and I said, yo, my man, let me tell you something. I said, you can't come over here no more. And he's like, what? It's my girl. I said, that's not your girl no more. It's my girl. And I told him, I said, if you come over here again, you're going to have a problem with me. And so he just turned around, and he left. So anyway, me and this young lady started dating, and then we got married. We got married. She was pregnant, and, I was selling drugs at the time, and then she told me, she said, if we're going to get married, you got to get a job, a real job. So I'm like, a real job? I'm saying, okay. But I had no idea I was getting no real job. So anyway, she had a son already in our relationship, and he used to ride a school bus to school. So she done talked to the driver, got an application, filled the thing out, and when I came over, she was like, come with me. So we get to the bus company, sign the application, and these guys hired me. So now I got a real job. I'm driving a bus in New York City, and I was trying to be faithful to this. And I wanted to be faithful to my wife because I loved her and my children, because that's all I ever wanted. And so as time went on, it just felt like the money wasn't adding up. Like I couldn't do some of the things that I was used to doing. I couldn't buy my family some of the nice things that I wanted them to have. And so what did I do? I went back to doing what I do best, selling drugs. So I began to open up this spot. And everybody want to find out, who's this new dude on the block selling this stuff? And I'm letting everybody know it's me. That's who. Because I just moved into this area with my wife and my family, and I wanted to make a name for myself. And so there was one gentleman in particular. He started sending these death threats, talking about what he's going to do to me. And so I remembered one of those nights my father told me, he said, Derik, he said, if you find out that somebody's looking for you, he said, you don't wait for them. You go find them. So I did just that. I found out he was talking, and in the middle of the night, I would approach him. What's up? And he would be like, oh, I don't want no problems. And so because he didn't want no problems, and I was trying to make a name for myself, and he had a name on the block, every time I saw him, I put the pressure on him. I made him feel like a little ant, like a little baby. And one day in particular, he was coming out this building, and I saw him. He was with his wife and with his little son. And in front of his wife and his little son, I just began to belittle him. And I made him feel this big in front of his family. And he looked at me, almost with these tears in his eyes, and he says, I'll be right back. And again, because I wanted to make a name for myself, I told him, I said, yeah, you come on back. I'll be right here. Because I thought I was good with these. Because I had a couple of fights, and things turned out well for me. So I wanted to make a name for myself. I wanted people to know that I could fight. So he comes back. He's walking up the block. It's two of them with him. So I'm like, you know what? I'm going to try them, man. I think I'm good enough. So they come up the block. We start fighting. Boom, boom, boom. We fighting. One of them got me from behind the neck. And it was a young lady. She was a lesbian. I didn't find out until later. She had me behind the neck while I'm fighting them. So I remember taking her from behind my neck, and I flipped her over. And as I flipped her over, I hit her twice. Bow, bow. And the second time I hit her, I saw a girl walking out the building. And all of this happened within split seconds. She's walking out the building. She got this hood on her head. She got her hands in her pocket. And the guy is standing right in front of me. We fighting. She passes him a gun. He stands over me with the gun. And all of a sudden you hear, bow, bow. He shoots me in the chest 2 times. One bullet went in my chest and came out my back. The other bullet went in my chest and then it went down. It caused my lungs to collapse, my bladder, my spleen, and as silent as it is right now, that's how it was on the block. The whole block just got hush. And I stood up slowly. And I put my hands on my chest because of the heat from the blood. And I looked at my hand, and I pushed him with all my might. And his back, he hit the building. When his back hit the building, I took off running. Now I'm running down the block. I'm hiding behind cars and behind vans because he's running behind me and he's shooting. Pow, 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 pow. He's trying to finish me off, and I'm running and I'm ducking and I'm trying to get away. And I can't breathe because my lungs are filling up with blood now. And I'm breathing slower and slower and slower. So I got a pocket full of money. So I go into the little Spanish grocery store and I go, Papi, Papi, call the ambulance. And he goes, no, Papi, you got to get out of here. And I'm like, oh my God, what am I going to do? So I still got the money in my hand. I try to catch a taxi, a cab. I'm like, nobody would stop for me because of the blood was just gushing out. And so I can't run no more. I'm just walking. And I get to the corner. And what I do is I stand. There's a parked car. I stand with my back up against the car because I can't move no more. I can't breathe. But I don't want this dude to finish me off, so I need to see him. And I'm standing there struggling to get a breath. And the people are crowding around me. And I tell them, I say, yo, get away from me. I need to see if this dude is coming. Because they all asking me, who did it, who did it, who did it? And I'm going, just get out of my way. I need to see if he's still coming. And I don't know about here, but in New York City, when you're bleeding like that, the police cannot touch you. And I love the police. I love officers. They do a wonderful and an awesome job. But it is against the law for them to touch you. So I had to stay there bleeding with the police standing there. But it was a sense of rest because I didn't have to worry about this guy. So while I'm standing there, I can't breathe. The police are there. The blood is just gushing out of me. I have this conversation with God. And I simply say this. I go, God, I don't want to die. I said, God, I want to be a father. And that's all I said. And I didn't hear no, thou art going to be a Christian, thou art a man of God. I didn't hear none of that. I just felt this sense of peace and of rest. And in my mind, I knew I was going to be okay. The ambulance come, they throw me in the ambulance, and I'm thinking I'm good, I'm all right. They start cutting my clothes and all this kind of stuff. And in New York City, you'll see the ambulance riding through the streets crazy. But I knew something was different because they was all on the sidewalk, on the street, all over the place. And I was going, man, maybe I am bad because I've never seen them drive like this. So I get in the hospital, and you ever see in the movies, they got them on a bed and they roll in the white lights, whoosh, whoosh. That's real. That is real. Those white lights keep going over your head. So I get in the hospital, and the nurse, immediately what she does, I'm laying on the gurney, she lifts up my arm, and she just cuts me. No Novocaine, no Tylenol or nothing. She just cuts me, and then she starts sticking this tube through my chest because she had to pump the blood out because I couldn't breathe. And there's officers over me, and they going, Derik, who did it? Who did it? Who did it? Who did it? And we got this stupid code in the streets that we don't tell on nobody. So here I am, I'm on my deathbed. The police is asking me who did it, and I'm holding this code. I don't know. I know exactly who it is, because all in my mind is I'm going to kill him. I'm going to kill this dude. So anyway, I remember just blacking out. And I can go so much further with the testimony, but because of time, I don't want to go over the time. But here's what I want to say to you today. There are many of us in this room who, there are some dark areas in our life. And oftentimes we don't realize that these dark areas kind of become a major force in our life. You see, the devil will take the thoughts of those things and he'll begin to shape you, so to speak. And as we continue to think on these things, we become them. The Bible says that as a man thinketh, so is he. Now, what I know about in this room is that there is a lot. I know it because I found myself there in ministry, loving the Lord, serving, but so many things from my past still hanging on. And I found myself bound. And I want to encourage you today, those that are in this room. The Bible says that he who the Son has set free is free indeed. The Bible says that where the Spirit of the Lord is, that there is liberty, there's freedom. And in this room, there is freedom. See, I know that there are men and women that are in this room, and I can see it in your eyes. I can see it. There's hurt, there's pain, there's guilt. But let me tell you something. God is not a respecter of person. You see, he didn't just take me and save me. He took me, he saved me. He made me a husband, again to my wife. He made me a father to all of our children. He made me a preacher of the gospel of Jesus Christ. He made me an evangelist. He made me a missionary. I go all around the world to the glory of God, sharing about the goodness and the grace of God. Who in the world am I to be able to do that? But there are men and women in this room that God has been speaking to you. And you're doing just like me. You're kind of shortening his hand because you're saying, no, not I. I'm not qualified. I don't measure up. And I want to challenge you today. I don't even know if this is the right forum to do that. Can I do an altar call? Listen, I say this to you. See, it's easy for us to sit in our seat and we hear the word of the Lord. He's speaking to us. It's when God comes. That's now. When he comes, when God speaks, he gives you the power, he gives you the ability, he gives you absolutely everything you need. And so I know that God is speaking to people in this room. And today, my challenge to you is this. It's no more shackles, no more chains, I am free.